On our Chapter 5 College Algebra Review on number 1, the directions say determine whether the given ordered pair is a solution of the system. And then they give us this pair, which is -3, -2. And they give us our two equations, 2x plus y equals -8, and 4x plus 2y equals -16. So we just need to go ahead and substitute in those numbers. So if you remember, this -3 is our x value, and -2 is our y. So now it's just a matter of substituting in to the equation 2x plus y equals -8. So you'll notice substituting in that 2, we got 2 times -3, and then substituting that -2, now solving it. So 2 times -3 is -6, and -2, so 2 plus, or -6 plus -2 is -8. So that is true for the first equation. Now we got to go ahead and substitute it in and see if it is true for our second equation. So again, remember, here we have x is -3, y is going to be -2. So substituting in -3 and -2. So we got 4 times -3, and then we got 2 times -2. So simplifying this down, so I got 4 times -3 is going to give me a -12. So 2 times -2 is going to be a -4. So add those together and you get a -16. So that makes another true statement. -16 equals -16. So since it is true for both equations, that means that I have my solution. So that answer is going to be B. It is a solution. Okay, looking at problem number 2. It says solve the system by the substitution method. So it has your equation, got 3x plus y all equals 13. And you've got your other equation, which is 2x plus 9y all equals -8. So using the substitution method, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first equation here, and I'm going to go ahead and solve it for y. So solving my top equation right here for y. So when I solve for y, I'm going to move this 3x over here. So I'm going to get y equals -3x plus 13. Now that I've solved that equation for y, I'm going to go ahead and substitute in my y value into my second equation. So when I substitute it in, I get 2x, and then plus 9 times -3x plus 13 all equals -8. Go ahead and distribute this on through. So distributing this 9 on through, I've got 2x, 9 times -3x is going to give me that -27x, and then 9 times 13 is going to give me 117. Combining my like terms, so 2x, -27x, it's going to give me then -25x. I still have my plus 117 all equals -8. So now I'm going to subtract 117 from both sides. And now I get -25x all equals -125. And then go ahead and divide both sides by -25. And you'll get that x equals 5. Okay, now that I know that x equals 5, I'm going to substitute that into my equations. So let's look up here at our equations. And the equation that I chose to substitute it into is the 3x plus y all equals 13. So I wrote that equation down here. And I'm going to go ahead and substitute in my 5 into my x value. So now I got 3 times 5 plus y all equals 13. So 3 times 5 is going to give me the positive 15 plus y all equals 13. Subtract 15 from both sides, and I get my y value that goes along with my x value, which is going to be -2. Therefore, my solution to this set of equations is x equals 5 and y equals -2. On problem number 3, gives me my two equations. It says my equations are 5x minus 2y equals -1. And I have 7x plus 4y all equals 53. It says solve the system by the addition method. So the addition method is, I'm going to go ahead and add my two equations together, eliminating a variable. I notice that the easiest equations to add, or the easiest variable to get rid of, would be my 4. So that means that I'm going to multiply my top equation by 2. So that would give me that -4y, which would be with my positive 4y. So that's my first step. I'm going to go ahead and multiply my top equation by 2. And when I multiply my top equation by 2, I got 2 times 5x, going to give me the 10x. I got the 2 times negative 2 is going to give me my negative 4y. And then 2 times negative 1 is going to give me a negative 2. I still have my second equation. So I write my second equation right below it. I got 7x plus 4y all equals 53. I just want to go and add those two equations together. So when I add those two equations together, I've got my 10x and my 7x. Add that together, I get my 17x. Got my negative 4y plus 4y is 0. That's what makes this method work. And then I've got negative 2 plus 53 is equal to 51. I go and divide both sides by 17. And that gives me my x value of 3. So now that I know that my x value is equal to 3, I'm going to substitute that into my first equation. 5x minus 2y all equals negative 1. So if we scroll back up here and take a look at our first equation right here. So here's my first equation. 5x minus 2y equals negative 1. I'm going to go ahead and substitute in that x value that I found, which was 3. So substituting that in, I've got 5. Here's my x value of 3. Minus my 2y all equals negative 1. Solving this, 5 times 3 is 15. Minus 2y equals negative 1. Now I subtract 15 from both sides. So when I subtract 15 from both sides, I got negative 1 minus 15. And negative 1 minus 15 is going to give me this negative 16. And I divide both sides by negative 2. And when I divide both sides by negative 2, I get my y value, which is equal to 8. So my solution set on number 3 is going to be, my x value was 3, and my y value was 8. So my solution set is 3 and 8. On this next problem on number 4, it gives me 2 sentences that describes some equations. The first sentence says one number is 5 less than a second number. Then it says twice the second number is 2 less than 5 times the first. Find the two numbers. So I'm going to write equations and then use the substitution method. So you'll notice that I don't know what the number is, so when I read one number, I'm going to give it the value of x. Is means equals, and then it says it's going to be 5 less, so minus 5, and my second number, which is y. So that's my first equation, x equals y minus 5. Now my second equation, it says twice the second number. Well, my second number was y, so that's 2y, is, and then it says it's 2 less than 5 times the first. So there's 5 times my first number. So that's my second equation, 2y equals 5x minus 2. Now, I'm going to go ahead and solve it using the substitution method. So since x equals y minus 5, I'm going to substitute that in. I end up with 2y equals 5 times y minus 5 minus 2. Go and use your distributive property. So distributing this 5 on through, you're going to end up with 5y minus 25. Now I have my equation 2y all equals 5y minus 25 minus 2. Combining my like terms, I've got my negative 25 and negative 2. It's going to give me that negative 27. I'm going to subtract 5y from both sides. When I subtract 5y from both sides, 2y minus 5y is going to give me that negative 3y. Now I go ahead and divide both sides by negative 3. And negative 27 divided by negative 3 is going to be a positive 9. Okay, now that I know that my y value is positive 9, I come up here to my equations, and I'm just going to use my first equation right here. So I've got this first equation, x equals y minus 5. I'm going to go ahead and substitute in that y value to find my x value. Here's my y value at 9. Substituting that into my equation, I got x equals 9 minus 5, so x is going to equal 4. Therefore, my solution set on number 4 comes out to be x equals 4 and y equals 9. On number 5, I've got 3 equations here. It says I have x plus y plus z all equals 1. I have x minus y plus 2z all equals 9. And I have 4x plus y plus z all equals negative 2. And it just wants to know if this ordered triplet is the solution or not. Remember, this is the x is my first, y is my second, and z is going to be my third. So x is equal to negative 1, y is equal to negative 2, and z is equal to 4. So I substitute those in. So in place of my x value, I put in my negative 1. In place of my y value, I'm going to put in my negative 2. In place of my z, I'm going to put in my 4. I'm going to add those together and see if it makes a true statement. So now that I've substituted those in, I take negative 1 plus negative 2 is going to give me that negative 3 plus 4. And then negative 3 plus 4 is going to give me that 1, which equals my 1. So that means my first statement is true. So now I go on to my second statement. So again, here is my x value, which is negative 1. I substitute that in. Now I've got minus y value, so that y is negative 2. I substitute that in. And my z value, which is 4, I substitute that in. Go ahead and solve it and see if that equals 9. So negative 1 minus and minus 2 would be negative 1 plus 2. And then I've got 2 times 4, which is going to be 8. Now negative 1 plus 2 is going to be positive 1. And then plus 8, and that's going to give me that 9, which equals my 9. So in the second equation, that produces a true statement, so it's a solution to the second equation. Now, looking at my third equation here, I've got 4x plus y plus z all equals negative 2. So here's my x value, I substitute it in. Here's my y value, go ahead and substitute it in. And my z value, I substitute that in. Now simplifying it and solving it, see if it equals negative 2. So 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. I've got plus negative 2 plus 4. So I've got negative 4 plus negative 2 is going to be negative 6 plus 4. And then negative 6 plus 4 is going to be negative 2, which is what it's supposed to equal. So that solution set worked for all of my equations. It was true in all of them. So it would be a solution to my system. So that answer is B, a solution. Now in this next set, we got to go ahead and find and solve our system of equations. So we have to find out what the value of x is, the value of y is, and the value of z. So my three equations are x plus y plus z all equals 7. I have x minus y plus 2z all equals 7. And 5x plus y plus z all equals 11. So I'm going to add the first and second equation together, and it looks like I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the y variable. So since I notice this is a y and a negative y, I can just go ahead and directly add those two together. I don't have to multiply by anything. So I'm just going to add those two together. So here's my answer right here. So when I take x plus x, I'm going to get that 2x. I've got y negative y is 0. I've got z plus 2z is going to give me the 3z. And 7 plus 7 is going to give me my 14. So I've added the first and second equation together, eliminating the y variable. So now I have to go ahead and add the second and third equations together, eliminating the y variable. So notice to eliminate the y variable, just have to add those two together, it looks like. That already eliminates the y variable. So adding those two together, I don't have to multiply by anything. So I've got my x plus 5x going to give me my 6x. And my negative y plus y is 0. I've got 2z plus z is going to give me my 3z. And 7 plus 11 is going to be 18. So here's my two equations. I've got 2x plus 3z all equals 14. And then I have my second equation, which is 6x plus 3z all equals 18. I'm going to add those two together. And it looks like the easiest variable to eliminate would be my z variable. So I'm going to multiply this top equation by negative 1. So let's go ahead and scroll on down here and multiply this by negative 1. So when I multiply by negative 1, so I've got my 2x times negative 1 is going to be negative 2x. Got my minus 3z. And it's all going to equal negative 14. I keep my second equation, which is 6x plus 3z equals 18. Add those together. And then I'll be able to solve for my x variable. So adding these together, I've got negative 2x plus 6x is going to give me my 4x. Negative 3z plus 3z is 0. And negative 14 plus 8 is going to be, negative 14 plus 18 is going to be positive 4. Divide both sides by 4. And now I know my x value is equal to 1. Now that I know that my y value is equal to 1, I'm going to use my equation, which is 2x plus 3z all equals 14. I'm going to substitute in this 1. Solving that, I get 2 plus 3z equals 14. I subtract 2 from both sides, so I get 3z all equals 12. Divide both sides by 3, and I get my z value, which is equal to 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my first equation, which says that x plus y plus z all equals 7. So here I'll write my first equation. So x plus y plus z all equals 7. Now substituting in my x value, which I know is 1. My y value is what I'm looking for. My z value is equal to 4. Substituting those in, I got 1 plus y plus 4 all equals 7. Simplifying this down, my 1 and my 4 become the 5. So I have y plus 5 all equals 7. Subtract 5 from both sides, and I get y equals 2. There's my order triplet. I've got x equals 1, I've got y equals 2, and z equals 4. So just go ahead and write those in alphabetical order. And here's your solution of 1, 2, and 4. And number 7, it says I've got x squared plus y squared all equals 41. I've got x plus y all equals 9. The directions say solve the system by the substitution method. So solving the system by the substitution method, I'm going to take my second equation. I'm going to solve for y. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So I get y equals 9 minus x. Now that I know that y equals 9 minus x, I'm going to substitute that into my first equation. And when I do that, I end up with this equation right here, which is x squared plus 9 minus x squared all equals 41. So to solve this, you're going to have to FOIL the second part right here. So if you need to, you can write your equation down twice and FOIL it, or you can just do it in your head. You got 9 minus x times 9 minus x. So when I FOIL that out, you can notice 9 times 9 is going to give me that 81. So I still have my x squared. FOILing this out, I get 81. So outsides, it's going to be negative 9x. Insides, negative 9x. And when I add my outsides, insides together, that gives me negative 18x. And then here's my lasts. Negative x times negative x is going to be x squared. And that still all equals 41. Now I need to combine like terms and factor it. So combining like terms, I've got x squared plus x squared is going to give me 2x squared. I still have my negative 18x. And then I've got 81, and I've got 41, so when I subtract 41 from both sides, that's going to give me that 40 right here. So here's my equation. 2x squared minus 8x plus 40 all equals 0. Now to make it easier to do my factoring, I'm going to divide everything by 2. So I'm going to divide all terms by 2. That leaves me with my equation. 2 divided by 2, of course, is going to be my x squared. Negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. 40 divided by 2 is going to be 20, and that all equals 0. Now I can factor it. So my numbers, my factors of 20, which is 4 and 5, they add up to be my 9. It's negative, so I factor down to x minus 5 times x minus 4 all equals 0. I set each factor equal to 0 and solve it. And those will be my x values. So I got x minus 5 all equals 0. When I solve that, I get x equals 5. Got x minus 4 equal to 0. I solve that and I get x equals 4. Now that I know that my y value or my x values are 5 and 4, to find my y values, I go ahead and find my equation. It gave me my y. And so this equation right here, y equals 9 minus x, I'm going to use that equation to find my y values. So scrolling down here, so here's my equation. So y all equals 9 minus x. So now I'm going to go ahead and substitute in my 5 right here. So y is going to equal 9 minus 5, which is going to be 4. So that first order pair is going to be x equals 5, y equals 4. Now my second order pair again, I'm going to go ahead and substitute in my 4 into this equation. So I get y equals 9 minus 4, and 9 minus 4 gives me my 5. So here's my second order pair, which would be 4 and 5. Therefore, the solution of those equations of x squared plus y squared equals 41 and x plus y equals 9, my solution is going to be 5 and 4 and 4 and 5. On number 8, it says I've got my two equations, x squared plus y squared equals 116, and x squared minus y squared equals negative 84. It says solve the system by the addition method. I can add them together, I don't have to multiply by anything because my y squareds are opposites. So I just add those together. So adding those together, I've got x squared plus x squared. That's going to give me my 2x squared. Y squared negative y squared is 0. And then I take 116 plus negative 84, I'm going to get 32. And my equation 2x squared all equals 32. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And I get x squared all equals 16. Now that I know that x squared equals 16, taking the square root of both sides. So taking the square root of x squared, the square root of 16, I get both positive and negative 4. So now that I know that x is both positive and negative 4, I'm going to go ahead and substitute positive and negative 4 into my equation to find out what my y value is. So here's my equation. So I've got x squared plus y squared all equals 116. So now I'm going to substitute in my 4. So 4 squared is 16 plus y squared all equals 116. I subtract 16 from both sides. And 116 minus 16 is going to be 100. I've got y squared equals 100. Taking the square root of 100, and I get plus minus 10. So I know that my positive 4 has both a positive 10 that matches with it and a negative 10. So those are my two answers. Now I go to same equation and substitute in negative 4. And you'll notice it does pretty much the exact same thing. When I put in this negative 4, I got negative 4 squared plus y squared equals 116. Negative 4 squared is 16 plus y squared equals 116. I go ahead and subtract 16 from both sides. And I get y squared equals 100. Then I take the square root of both sides and I get y equals plus minus 10. So that plus minus 10 is also going to be paired up with my negative 4. So notice that here's my negative 4. It has a pairing of positive 10 and negative 10. So this has 4 solutions to it. It's got 4 and 10, 4 and negative 10, negative 4 and 10, and negative 4 and negative 10. Okay, on problem number 9, it says the perimeter of the rectangle is 26 inches and its area is 30 square inches. What are its dimensions? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use our perimeter formula. So remember the perimeter of a rectangle is 2x plus 2y, and that's all going to equal 26. And the area formula is length times width, so that is x times y all equals 30. So these are the two formulas we're going to be working with. There's our two equations. 2x plus 2y all equals 26, and x times y all equals 30. So now to go ahead and solve this, we're going to use the substitution method. So to use the substitution method, I'm going to go ahead and take my second equation and solve it for y. So I take my second equation and solve it for y. That means I divided both sides by x. So I end up with this equation, y equals 30 divided by x. I'm going to go ahead and substitute that into my equation. And when I do that, I end up with 2x plus 2 times 30 times over x, all equals 26. I'm going to go ahead and solve this, getting rid of my denominator. So to get rid of your denominator, you're going to multiply by the least common denominator, so that least common denominator is x. So multiply all my terms by x. So when I do that, I end up with 2x squared. When I multiply this one by x, nothing crosses out, but 2 times 30 is 60. And then I multiply this last term by x, and I get 26x. So I've got my equation, 2x squared plus 60 all equals 26x. I'm going to put it in descending order so I can go ahead and factor it. So putting it in descending order, I'm going to bring the 26x over. So when I bring the 26x over, that's subtracting 26 from x from both sides. And now I have my equation, 2x squared minus 26x plus 60 all equals 0. So to make it easier to go ahead and factor this, I'm going to divide everything by 2. So when I do that, I end up with x squared. I divide this term by 2, I end up with negative 13x. I divide this term by 2, I end up with 30. I divided this by 2, and I end up with 0. Now that I've done that, it's a lot easier to factor it. So I got x squared minus 13x plus 30 all equals 0. So now the factors of 30 that are going to add up to be negative 13 is going to be a negative 3 and a negative 10. Put those into my two binomials. So I have x minus 3 times x minus 10 all equals 0. So now here's my answers. So I take this and set it equal to 0. So I got x minus 3 equals 0. And so that's going to leave me with x equals 3. And I have my other equation, x minus 10, set that equal to 0, and solve that. And I get x equals 10. So now it looks like the dimensions doesn't really matter. When I use the dimension of 3, you're going to notice that when I substitute that in, or I can take this dimension of 10, you're going to get the exact same answer when I substitute that into my equation. So y equals 30 over x. So y equals, when I substitute in my x for 10, so I get y equals 30 divided by 3. If I let x equal 3, so that's going to give me my y dimension of 10. Or if I let my x dimension be the 10, so I get y all equals 30 divided by 10, which is equal to 3. And so that is your answer. You've got a 3 by 10 would be your dimensions for your rectangle. Okay, on number 10, it wants me to go ahead and graph this equation on number 10. So number 10, it says I've got negative 2x minus 5y is going to be less than or equal to 10. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and graph this using my intercepts. So remember my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So your x-intercept is when y equals 0, and your y-intercept is when x equals 0. So notice I'm going to substitute this in. And when I substitute that in and I solve it, I get negative 5y is less than or equal to 10. I divide both sides by negative 5, and I get my dimension of y is equal to negative 2. Now when I do this other equation, I have my y equal to 0, so I substitute that in there. And so remember, that's just going to cross that out. So I get negative 2x is equal to 10. Divide both sides by negative 2. And I get my x value of negative 5. Okay, now that I've got my two ordered pairs, I'm going to go ahead and graph these. So I go to my graph, I go to 0, negative 2, put my dot there. So then I go to negative 5 and 0. So back here at negative 5 and 0, put my other dot there. And I check. It's less than or equal to, so it's going to be a solid line. And now I have to decide where to shade at. So to shade, you have to choose and test a point that's on your graph. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose the point of 0, 0. So that'd be this point right here, and I want to see if it's a true or false statement. So I'm going to take 0, 0, I'm going to substitute it into my original equation. So you'll notice I got negative 2x minus 5y is less than or equal to 10. I'm going to substitute in 0 into that equation. So when I do that, I get negative 2 times 0 minus 5 times 0 is less than or equal to 10. I solve it, and I get this statement, 0 is less than or equal to 10. That is a true statement, so that means that I'm going to shade where that point is. So here's my point 0, 0. So then I just shade where it's at, and that would be your solution. On this next problem, I've got x is greater than or equal to negative 8. So to go ahead and graph this, I remember that x equals negative 8 is a vertical line. And notice since this is not equal to, it is dotted. And this says that x is greater than negative 8. So your greater x's are to the right. So to graph this, I go to my point, negative 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I make my dotted line here. And since x is greater than negative 8, that means I'm shading to the right. And so that's what your graph would look like. Okay, on this next equation, on number 12, it wants me to go ahead and, it says it wants me to graph x squared plus y squared is less than or equal to 9. So remember the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared all equals r squared. Well, your center is going to be, looks like I miswrote that, so that'd be h and k. And then your radius is going to be r. So now I go ahead and graph this. So to graph it, I find my center. So here's my center. When I solve that, that's 0, 0. And here's my radius. So that number there is the radius squared. So I take 9, I take the square root of it, and I get 3 for my radius. So I go ahead and go to 0, 0 for my dot here. I'm going to move out 3, so 3 in each direction. So up 3, down 3, left 3, right 3. Now I need to check to see if this is solid or dotted. So to check to see if it's solid or dotted, I go back to my original equation. And so this right here is equal to, so that's going to be a solid circle. So you'll notice when I graph this, I got a solid circle here. I got to decide where to shade at. So to shade, I pick a point. So I'm just going to pick this point 0, 0 again. I'm going to test it to see if it makes a true or false statement in my original equation. So to check this, so let me go ahead and rewrite this real quick. So I'm going to scroll down here. There's my equation, x squared plus y squared is less than or equal to 9. So I've got x squared plus y squared is less than or equal to 9. I'm going to choose that point right here of 0, 0. I'm going to substitute it in. So I have 0 squared plus 0 squared is less than or equal to 9. So that gives me the statement of 0 is less than or equal to 9. So that's a true statement. So I'm going to shade where those points are at. So that will be shaded inside. And that will be your answer. And number 13, the directions say it wants me to go ahead and graph again y is greater than x squared plus 3. So first off, I notice that since this is an x squared equation, that means that it's a parabola. And it's plus 3, so that means that it is shifted up 3. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shift this up 3. So here's my point. So here's 1, 2, 3. And now I need to see if it's a dotted line. So I look at this right here. It's not equal to, so that would be a dotted line. So I'm going to go ahead and make my parabola. So here's my dotted line. Okay, now I got to decide whether I'm going to shade above or below it. So there's two ways that you can decide that. So since this is already solved for y, this says y is greater than. Your greater y's are above, so that means that I just shade above my parabola. So that's the second rule that I can use to figure out my shading. And that would be your answer. On number 14, we've got two equations we're going to go ahead and graph here. We've got the first equation, y is greater than x squared. And we've got our second equation, 9x plus 2y is less than or equal to 18. First thing I notice is that this top equation is a parabola. And my second equation is going to be a line. So now to graph my parabola, I check to see if it has shifted at all. There's no shifts happening here. So since there's no shifts, all I have to do is go ahead and go to the vertex, which would be at 0, 0. So here I go to 0, 0. And then I just go ahead and check to see if it's a solid or dotted line. So right here tells me that that's going to be dotted. So I've got a dotted parabola. And so I go ahead and dot it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and graph my line. So to graph my line, again, I use my intercepts. So I'm going to use my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So notice when I do my y-intercept, that means that x is 0. So I go ahead and solve that. So that leaves me with 2y all equals 18. When I divide both sides by 2, that gives me my y value of 9. So that y-intercept is going to be a 0, 9. And now my x-intercept, so make y be 0. So then I end up with 9x is equal to 18. When I divide both sides by 9, that's going to give me an answer of 2. So those are my two intercepts right there, 0, 9, and 2, 0. So you'll notice I come up here to 0 and 9. Put my dot there. I come over here to 2 and 0. Put my dot there. I check this. This tells me that it's going to be a solid line. I check the inequality. So now I go ahead and draw in my solid line right here. Okay, now that I've done that, I just need to check to see where I can shade this at. So first off, this is already solved for y, so this is y is greater than, so that's going to be shaded above. So notice I've already started shading above this. So I can also choose a point to figure out where I'm going to shade with the line in relation to the line. But notice if I was to solve this for y, this would be y is less than or equal to 9 halves, negative 9 halves x, and then plus 9. So notice if I move the negative 9x over, I have my 18, I divide everything by 2. This tells me that y is less than that, so that means I'm going to be shading below the line. So shaded above on my parabola, below my line, and so that just ends up being that area right in there. So that's what your graph would look like on number 14. You've got a dotted parabola, you've got a solid line, and shaded in between them. On number 15, we want to graph all three of these equations here. So we have 2x plus 3y is greater than or equal to 6. We have x minus y is less than or equal to 3. And y is less than or equal to 2. So the first thing I do is identify what kind of shapes all these are. So notice this first one is a line. My second one is also a line. And then my third one is a line, but more specifically, it's going to be a horizontal line at 2. So to plot these points, I'm going to put in a 0. And notice when I do that, that gives me a 2 right here for that point, for that y-intercept. Now for my x-intercept, make y be 0. So that means that this is going to be 3 to make that true statement. So that's your points 3 and 0. So now here's my next intercepts. I put in x is 0. And so that means that y would have to be negative 3, because a negative makes that a positive. So that's my point 0, negative 3. When I put in my 3, I get my 0. And so 3 minus 0 is going to be 3. So those are the points that I'm going to plot to make my shape here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot that top line. Let's see if I can get this all on the same screen at the same time. So I'm going to go to 0 and 2. So I'll put my dot there. I'm going to go to 3 and 0, put my dot there. I check to see whether it is a solid or a dotted line. So this tells me that it's going to be solid since it's equal to. So when I go to draw my line, I've got this solid line sitting right here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and graph my second equation. So I go to 0, negative 3. So that's down here. And I go to 3 and 0, that's right there. I check also, again, that's going to be solid. So here's my solid line right here. Okay, now I'm going to graph my horizontal line. So this is horizontal line, so I go up to 2. I draw a horizontal line. And that is also solid, since it's equal to. So that's what my shape looks like. Now I just got to figure out where to go ahead and shade it. So notice, I'll just start with this one, y is less than or equal to 2, so that would be shaded below this line. Now notice on this problem right here, if I was to solve for y, that negative would actually flip this inequality. So that's y is greater than or equal to that line, so that would be shaded above. So, and then this one right here, greater than or equal to that. So that's going to be shaded above this one. So it ends up being this little middle piece right here. And that's what your graph will look like.